Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. It is so exciting. We have got ourselves a incredible author who is going to be sharing his story. And you all know how excited I am when we get male guests on the podcast. So I am going to welcome Perry and ask him to introduce himself and let you all know where he's from.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Yeah, my name is Perry. I am a storyteller, and pretty much 142% of what I do is working with trauma survivors and essentially helping them to break their silence and share their story with the world.
Incredible. And you have your own story, of course, as I think everyone who kind of works in this line does. So we're here to talk about your story today, and it's going to be so incredible to share this. So, what would you say was like the first moment that you kind of realized you needed to start healing?
I think that it was when I went onto YouTube and Ellen DeGeneres just brought out this video where she was interviewing Lewis Howes, and he just brought out his book, Mask of Masculinity. And she asked him, "Why did you write it?" And he said, "Because I was abused as a kid and I grew up wearing all of these different masks in order to fit in." And it was in that moment where I had realized all of the years leading up to that moment, I was being this different version of Perry Power. I was being this character. And it's pretty much tied to the actor part of me where I created this character in order to be different. And I didn't really see a problem with it until he articulated it in a way where I was like, well, in one way I could say that was a character, but in another way I could say what I was really doing was creating masks from scratch to start wearing in order to further run away from the boy that was abused.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people talk about that idea of like you almost become a different person just to protect yourself and protect
Survival,
that
yeah.
boy. Yeah, absolutely. So, how long after that, like how long after the abuse happened, did you kind of have that moment? Like, what was the gap?
I think it was about 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was going on in that 12-year period?
So, I mean, as they say, and this might not be true for everyone, it was definitely true for me. And I think when it comes to this world of trauma and abuse, it's very dangerous to say that one thing works for everyone because it's so different. And for me, the trauma wasn't the abuse because at the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it and it wasn't traumatic for me. It wasn't. So the trauma wasn't then. The trauma came when I was living in silence as the years piled on and sex started to become a thing because of being a boy at that age. And then if sex was becoming a thing, then sexual abuse was close behind it in regards to knowing what it was. And then there is a domino effect. So sex, then there was a sexual abuse, and it was like I didn't speak out. Then I was like, I remember telling my mum that I enjoyed it. And then it just started to pile on, and then basically it was a shame. And then it was a shame, and it was, my dad was uh he was a my dad was a man's man. He was very manly. He was a Cockney geezer from London, and he was very much don't fuck about, right? This is how, this is you don't cry. Like it was very much that towards his later years, he was always crying. He completely changed. But me growing up as a boy, I saw that being a man was like my dad.
Mm.
So that just kind of like reinforced the shame. And as I grew up and I go through school, Then I go into college, it was just really, then it was just the masks that I started to wear to fit in with society, to be the ladies' man, and to be the guy who didn't care about anything. And again, I didn't see a problem with it. There were certain aspects of that that definitely brought me success. Uh, I think it's very common for people who are very, very successful in life with thriving companies at the top of the game. A lot of them are trauma survivors, and they use it in a way to bring them success. But don't get me wrong, there's lots of bad shit that comes with that. And a lot of times they're aware of it, but they don't want to break the silence and own that truth because, like for example, there is a boom kills me with the balloons. Um, uh, there is a guy who is the head of a major production company, movie company, like American. Everyone knows it. And he was abused,
Mm.
but nobody knows about it. It's not common knowledge. And it's just a prime example of how people at the top of the game are afraid to bring light to the most darkest part of themselves because they're afraid that if they do it, everything is going to crumble down,
Mm.
you know? And it was kind of like similar in a way, but however, I knew because after I broke my silence, so that time when I watched that video, that same day, my girlfriend at the time, I broke my silence to her. And then I don't know when it was, if it was before, at the same time, or after, but it was in the same year my dad passed away. Right. So my dad, we're talking 2017 now. My dad, by that point, he became an alcoholic. He had high blood pressure. He was diabetic. He was very, very negative. And cutting the story short, he had a heart attack. And he was 48 years old. He had a heart attack. He was struggling to breathe. Paramedics came around to the family house and they said, "Oh, we just need to take him down to the hospital to even out his blood levels." So
Mm.
he went into the back of the van. My stepmom, my grandma, my brother. Uh, my brother was living at the house at the time. And they were like, "Oh, Andy, we'll come down and pick you up from the hospital. We're just going to finish eating our dinner." So it's very much that. It wasn't serious. It was like, a bit of banter. We'll come pick you up in a bit, when we're ready. And my dad went into the back of the van and basically he didn't make it to the hospital. We just had a cardiac arrest in the back of the van. And and obviously I can say it fine now. I have my moments even now, but what became very evident was nobody becomes an alcoholic just because. You know, there's reasons why. I never knew what those reasons were, but I knew that my dad went down a dark path. And I just had his voice, we've all got a voice in our head, and sometimes it serves us, sometimes it doesn't. But in that moment, it served me by telling me, if you carry on the path you're on, you might also be dead before the age of 50.
Mm.
So that's then kind of where I decided to do the next thing, which was break my silence to the world. And I shared it on social media. And then after that, my whole family saw it. And then my auntie, my dad's sister, then told me that I wasn't the only one abused by my step granddad. It was my dad too. And then that's when it all made sense why my dad went down the path that he went down, why he told me to stay silent when he found out about the abuse. And then that's where the purpose kicked in of helping people in general, yes, but then I have a much deeper purpose, which is helping men not go down the same path that my dad went down.
Oh, absolutely. It's so interesting when you talk to that like generational trauma where, the person like your father has had that trauma and then because he wasn't able to deal with it and he sat in silence, he feels like that's the only way to exist. So he feels like he's doing a service to you by saying, just stay silent, like, don't do this. And it's really incredible that you were able to break that generational like trauma and actually break that silence and say, actually, I'm not going to go down the same path. I'm not going to do the same thing. I think that that's really incredible. So well done. Like, that is amazing. I don't think enough people give people credit for breaking those sorts of cycles. So that's amazing. So as you were going on the journey, you spoke about having like a lot of shame and like a lot of kind of guilt around that, like, how you felt about it and like how you processed it. Was that the biggest thing you kind of had to embrace in yourself to like go through this healing process, or was there more to it that you had to kind of embrace about who you were as a person as you went on this healing journey?
I think when, like, after I spoke out, it's interesting because I think like when it comes to, and I talk about this quite often, and I never really have concrete answers as to why, but I've never ever focused on healing. Healing has never been a thing for me. I've never ever had a thought I need to heal, or I'm on a healing journey, or I need to do this to find healing. It's just never been in my world. Uh, I have certain beliefs that healing doesn't need to be a lifelong journey, and if you're always looking for wounds to heal, if you're looking for wounds to heal, you're always going to find wounds to heal because what you focus on grows. You know, so it's like but it's not like I consciously made that decision and then didn't go down the path. Just naturally, once I broke my silence, and then my auntie told me about my dad, it was almost like purpose didn't knock on a door, bloody kicked the door down and said, right, we're gonna force ourselves into you. This is now your purpose for your entire existence on this planet. This is why you're here. And and that journey beyond that kind of was just like, okay, well, two things simultaneously. One is, who is Perry Power 2.0? Who do I need to become to live the life that I want to live? So what does that life look like? Emotional freedom, a business that brings me good money, a great family, an acting career. So it's like, okay, well, the current version of Perry Power isn't living that life. So therefore, I need to become 2.0 to then live that life. And the journey of who we become, I believe that healing happens as a byproduct of that, right? So we had that side of it. And then the purpose, I've been now sharing my story since the beginning of 2018. And I've never hit burnout. I don't believe I'll ever hit burnout because I don't believe that burnout and purpose are something that happen together. I think burnout happens when you're misaligned, and it's the universe's way of slapping you in the face with a wet fish, right? And so I think it's just, I don't know, it's just the path that I've gone on since then is just very much one of waking up every day and being like, right, who's living in silence today? Who can I help? And I don't know, that's just pretty much it. And I think that as just from consistency, the compound effect has taken over. And then that's what's led into a TEDx talk. That's what's led into the book because I'm constantly, okay, what else can I do? How else can I communicate to someone that's via a different communicative path compared to the one that I did last week, last month, last year?
Yeah, that's incredible. I think like yeah, there's so much good stuff in what you just said. Like I completely agree with you that the whole point of life is to live it, not to heal from it.
Mm.
So like we all are growing all the time, aren't we? We're all coming into 2.0, 3.0,
Yeah,
4.0, like who knows what version we'll end up as. But I really like that concept of like actually this version of myself wasn't serving me anymore. So how do I become a version who is going to serve me, who is going to live the life that I want, have the things that I want. I think that that is such a great way to actually look at life because it means that you're constantly keeping in focus the things that are important. You're keeping in focus the things that you're aiming towards, which I think is really, really important. So
yeah.
your purpose kind of came really naturally. It kind of sounds like it was like a real quick shift. Like, this is okay, now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And then you started this work that you're doing now of like helping other people break their silence and, write their books and share their stories. How did you make that transition? Like, was it something that you knew how to do already, or did you just learn it on your own journey? Like, how did you go from 1.0 to 2.0 as you went through that journey?
I think that similar to like before, where if you stay on the same path long enough, crazy things will happen that you never knew would ever happen to begin with. And it's just it's the consistency and that compound effect taking over that then, like, for example, I'm jumping forward a little bit here, but I run a
That's fine.
publishing company, right? So I run a publishing company, Powerful Books. I help trauma survivors write and publish their own book. The Perry Power before would have never thought in a million years would run a publishing company because I'm not the biggest fan of reading books because my focus, my attention span. I do read books and I force myself to read books because I have clients that publish books. So I force myself to read them. But I'm not the biggest fan of reading books. And never have been. Other than I don't know if you ever did you ever read the famous five books?
Yes. Oh my God, they're the
What they're
best.
banging. Right? They're banging. And I don't know because my grandma, I don't know if it's did I detect a South African accent in you?
Yes.
Yeah. So because my family, half of my family is South African, and they're from Durban. Yeah, and
Thing.
my grandma always, I don't know if it's a South African thing or if it's, because I don't even know how she even came across them, but she always, every year, she would buy me a famous five book, the next one, the next one, and growing up, they were my thing. You know, the dog, I can't remember the dog's name now, but it's famous five banging. But I used to love that. So maybe I like fiction, you know, but however, what the point I'm trying to get at here is that powerful books happened because I stayed on one path long enough with where doors just naturally opened because they made sense. So I wrote my science, shared my story a million times, and then I was like, right, what should I do next? Then a book came to my head. Never written a book before. How do I do it? No idea. It doesn't mean you don't do it. You just figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I wrote the book in about 30 days, but I didn't publish it because of imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, this book is shit. Right? I was like, the book is shit. It's gonna look like shit. I can't afford to hire a publishing company, so therefore I'm not going to publish it. Then a whole year goes by because I said to myself, I would do it when I could afford a publishing company. And publishing companies are, you know, you're looking anywhere between like 10 to 20 grand, you know, is like the average. And I said to myself, obviously, I had the high hopes that I'd afford it soon. A year goes by, I still couldn't afford it. I was like, okay. So I wake up one day, I'm like, right, Perry, you're going to give yourself 24 hours and you're just going to put it out there. So Canva did the book cover. I used Grammarly. I published a book with so many spelling errors. It's not even a joke, right? But did it make a difference? No, because the power of your story takes over whether you've spelt a word wrong.
Mhm.
It's about the message your story carries, not about the vocabulary that you're using.
Mhm.
So when I then published a book, then went into press and all of this sort of stuff happened. And then a little bit later, I can't remember how much, but a little bit later, then this woman, a friend of mine, connected her client to me, and she wanted to write a book. She's a survivor, and her
Mm.
name's Ali McDonald, and she became the. Do I have a book here? So not Annie McDonald, Annie McDonald. Um, the first ever book, right, from a survivor that I helped to write and publish. And it's called Walking Out of Shame. And as you could tell, it's all about the shame of her abuse. And her abuse was intrafamilial. It was between her and her dad. And when I did that, because I remember when she first asked me, I was like, because it's one thing doing it for yourself, failing forward, and then someone else asks you, but then they're asking you from a position of, you're the light. I need guidance. And you're like, shit, I couldn't even guide myself. I don't know. Right. And it's like, how on earth do I help you? But again, you figure it out. So I figured it out. I helped her. And then the rest is history. And then actually, no, I mean, actually, technically, I mean, yeah, technically the rest is history. But there was a period of time after I helped her with that book where I was like, I don't want to help people publish books because once I helped Ali do that, I remember saying to myself, well, if I want to help people publish books, that means I have to edit. I said, I don't want, because the way my brain is, you just need to go onto my social media and look at my last two posts, you'll see spelling errors. You know, like my eyes just don't pick it up. And I'm like, I can't imagine anything worse than editing someone's book. And this is what I was like back then. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do it. And then I constantly tried different offers, different programs. None of them ever worked. And then I remember this time where I was like, right, what, like future, because I'm a big visionary. I'm like, what's happening in the future? And there's always, my selfless purpose is helping trauma survivors.
Yeah.
My selfish purpose is acting and making films. And don't get me wrong, it does tick the box of selfless because the films that I want to make are all true story movies. I don't want to do anything that's make believe, are all true story films, biographical movies. And I was like, right, how can I make that happen? And then once you skip a few, it's powerful pictures, true story films. And I was thinking, well, how can I generate scripts? And then it just hit me, just like, literally just like that, which is you could create a publishing company where you help trauma survivors turn their stories into books. There'll be true story books. And then eventually, when funding and connections and things just naturally come together, you can literally just go through the books that you publish as a company. This book would be great as a film. Let's turn this into a script. Let's get that funded. And then it was full steam ahead. I launched Powerful Books February 28th last year, 2023, and it's the rest is history.
It's so incredible. I love the like the concept that if you just stay on the path, if you just stay focused on the thing that you want to achieve, on the true purpose, like it will the path will show itself, but also how you were so resistant to the path because
Yeah, I
you
know.
wanted to like do it perfectly. And like, isn't it so like so important for people to understand that like there is no way, like no perfect way of doing things. And if you're meant to be doing something, the path will kind of find itself. Like, do you sit and edit
Yeah.
loads of books now? Is that what you do with all of your time?
Well, for the first year, I didn't because I had an editor who um, is a survivor. She wrote her book, and then I brought her on the team to be an editor. But a couple of months ago, she changed. She went into she moved country from the UK to the US, and she works now in her husband's company. Well, no, sorry, not his company. He works for a company, and she now works with them. So she's no longer an editor. So at the moment, I am actually editing. I spend my evenings editing, right? And you'll know what's funny is that once upon a time, I thought I'd rather jump off a very, very high bridge than edit. Okay. And now I'm like, don't get me wrong, editing is not my most favorite thing in the world, but, and there is a big but, it brings me so close to the person that has written it. It's unbelievable. And in return, it brings me so close to powerful books. Like I feel like I'm married to powerful books, but then I edit someone else's book and it's like, let's do our wedding vows again, you know? And so whilst it's just funny, it's just funny how things work out. And
Mm.
it's like as long as you stay on the path of purpose, don't get me wrong, you need a lot of faith. You need faith that things are just going to work out. And not everyone can place all of their trust in that faith because it's the land of the unknown. So I understand why people don't stay on the same path. I'm like, well, how? It's the same thing with acting. They say, why are you trying to be an actor? You're not going to make it, right? That's usually the thing. And then if you are on a path of acting, they're like, okay, well, what's your plan B just in case plan A doesn't work out? I'm like, but how do you know that plan A is not going to work out? Because the only way you will know if you aren't making it as an actor is when you decide that you haven't made it as an actor or you die. One of the two, right? So if you decide, okay, well, I haven't made it as an actor, yeah, but you might make it tomorrow
Mhm.
or next week. But people are like, yeah, but do I do that for 40 years? I'm like, well, then that's your decision, you know? But I will try until I'm 94 years old. It doesn't matter because I know that one day, it's just going to pan out. And
Mm.
there's a lot of sacrifices that need to be made along the way. Don't get me wrong. You know, I'm very lucky that I'm with a woman, a beautiful, beautiful human being. Olivia, who is supportive of that. Right. And don't get me, it's hard. It's hard to date someone like me. Don't get me wrong. I've always known it. My part two girlfriends used to tell me all the time. And they were supportive for long enough. But, you know, it's I just believe that when purpose comes knocking, and if you have a dream, you just can't let go of it, you know? And if there's anything anybody can take away from this, because just, trauma survivors are human beings and human beings have dreams. And every kid has a dream. And usually they let go of that dream when they get older because it's not quote unquote realistic. And it's bollocks, I think. It's just the voices of other people in society that makes you think otherwise. And I think just like you with this podcast, you're a storyteller. You're helping people with platform with stories, and stories change the world and they change lives. And I think dreams are very much wrapped up in a good story. And if we can carry on telling that story, then who knows?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I think that so many people give up too soon. They walk away too soon because it is scary and it is hard. And I think anyone who is willing to write a book, start a podcast, put their story out into the world, start a business, like do anything, start a charity, like do anything that takes them stepping out of the kind of norm of what society says is possible. It just massively, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of, as you said, faith in yourself, in the fact that the things will line up, that you will get to that end goal that you want. But I mean, if you look backwards and you look at actors and writers and poets. And there are so many examples of people who started in their 50s, 60s, 70s and had so much success in their life. And you have people nowadays who are in their 20s saying, "Oh, my life's over. I'm never going to figure this out." And I just look at them, I think, what are you doing? Like, there's so much more that you can play for here. There's like so much more that you can do. There's so much more time. Like, as you said, it's not like the journey's only over when you decide it's over. And I think that, like for me, one of the saddest things that I see from people is when people literally die while they're still alive. They
Yeah, I
just
know.
stop living and like they just are not interested in doing anything, getting any better, like taking any growth in, taking any risks. Like I just think it's so, so fundamentally sad because there's so much to live for. Like, and I think being a trauma survivor kind of does give you that perspective as well, like that there is more to live for and you can kind of define that path.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's so true. And it's like what you said there, like there's so many layers to that that we could really just that you can deep that so much. And nothing, there's two things that really, really piss me off, right, in this world, which is one, when people are being silenced. So if I have this amazing person who wants to find their voice, who wants to speak out, but they're being silenced by family, usually. 9 times out of 10, it's family, uh, or their own voice, but usually the voice is just a mirror of someone in their family saying it, right? So let's just boil it down to family. So they're being silenced because of family. And it's that act there of being silenced is just vile. And I'll go to the ends of the world to break that. And then the other thing is when people have a dream, they have this purpose, and then like you say, they stop, they quit, or they die whilst they're still alive. Gary Vaynerchuk, I remember him, um, he said it in his video once. He said everybody, and he's in New York, and he's just looking at everyone, and he goes, everyone's walking around as if they're coming back, right? And like, where's the purpose? You know? And and it's like, and go back to acting again. But if anybody who is listening to this or watching this that can't relate to the acting part, just promise, like you can swap out acting and replace it with anything. If you want it to be a singer, if you want it to be a doctor, if you want it to be a writer, whatever it is, especially if it's artistic, because artistic is usually, kids are artists, right? and usually their dreams are somewhat connected to that, but there's no guarantee. And they
Mhm.
grow up and they want to be the the actor or the painter or the singer or the writer, and they will go. I remember when I was a kid, and my at the time my dad's best friend's wife walked me to a shop on the high street, and it's just crazy how little things you remember. I remember her saying to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be an actor." And she said, "Can you make me a promise?" I said, "What?" She goes, "Never let go of that." And I
Mm.
don't. It's interesting what she then goes on to say because it could have messed me up. But she said, "Your dad doesn't approve of it." Right? And I
Mm.
didn't know that, right? And she said, "Your dad doesn't approve of it. He wants you to do something else." And I think ever since then, I've had this vendetta, right? To people who I'm like, how dare you impose your own beliefs, your own lack ofs onto someone else and say what they can and can't do? If you don't think I am going to be a big time actor, that's not my problem. That's your problem, right? You need to deal with that. If you don't believe that I'm going to run a successful business, that's not my problem. That's your problem because I believe I will, you know? And it's the same thing across the board. And it's like if you don't believe, for example, let's make this hyper relevant. If you don't believe that sharing your story, if you don't believe that sharing your story is going to help someone else, that's your own problem, probably because you're the one living in silence. And you've sold yourself this story that you shouldn't speak out because it's not going to do anybody any favors,
Mhm.
right? But that's your belief. Don't impose that onto someone else because my reality and your reality are two different things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
It's so interesting because I have this conversation. So, um, part of what I do is help women start businesses. So, coming out of that, sort of like fear of being seen and coming into the world and making their own money
that's
and
the
all of
main
that.
one. That's
Yeah,
the main one. Fear of
absolutely.
being seen. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because, like, exactly what you're saying, like, I can relate back to a client I had a conversation with where she was starting her own business. She'd come out of employment and she was really kind of nervous about getting started. And she was looking for that validation from other people. Like, she was telling people about her business idea and expecting people to be really excited and be like, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. And like, she was looking for validation outside of herself. And it was so, so interesting because she literally said to me, like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. Like, I don't think I'm going to run this business. And I was like, okay, what happened? Because the last time we spoke, you were so excited and now you're not. And she was like, oh, I went to go pick up my kids from school and I was talking to the mums at the school gate and all of them told me that I'm like absolutely crazy and there's no market for this and it's going to be, it's going to be so hard and I'm never going to be successful and it's never going to work. And I looked at her and I said, do any of those women run their own online business? And she just stopped and she was like, no. And I was like, so why are you listening to them?
Mhm.
Why are you taking advice from somebody who doesn't have the same dream as you? From somebody, if you sat down with an actor and asked them, should I do this? They would say yes because they understand what goes into it. They understand the passion, they understand the success that you can have. If you sit down with a really like successful business person and tell them your business idea, they are not going to turn around and say to you, don't start a business. They're going to be like, this is brilliant, like do the thing, go. Like it's so important who you put in your corner when you go through these things because exactly like you said, like the voice of the family, the voice of the friend, the voice of the person who in all intents and purposes is trying to keep you safe, and in their mind, the only way to keep you safe is to keep you silent, is to keep up the pretenses of what society thinks. And like, especially with trauma, it's very much like, oh, what are people going to think of our family if they know that this thing happened? Like, if they know that this is what's going on behind closed doors, like, we don't want people to know. We don't want people to like hear what's happening. So it's like a protection mechanism, isn't it? But they're protecting the wrong person.
Yep. Yep. They are. They are. They are protecting absolutely the wrong person. And I think that, that's what my dad told me to stay silent.
Yeah.
And in one light, we could say, well, he was just trying to protect me. Yes, maybe. He's not alive now to confirm, but there is that. But there's also the other point, which is he was in silence, right? And if I was to break my silence to him, not only was I breaking my silence, I was also breaking his silence too, you know? And yeah, coming back to that, there was someone like not last week, the week before on our group call, and Glenn, and we've got 13 books at the moment published. Every one of them is a woman. All right. We've got nearly 60 people in the program, and we've got 5 men. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that there's 5 courageous men in the program, right? Uh, but I'd also love more. And we've got one man's book, his name's Mansoor, and just he's a lovely guy. He's in Pakistan. He's a gay man, right? So that's one thing. Just that in and of itself, a gay man in Pakistan, like that's like, if you need a reason to not be your true self, that's a big one, you know? And but not only that, but he was also abused. Another thing. And he's written his book. We've got that edited. We're just working on the book cover now, so I can't wait for that to be published. And I finished editing another book, another man, Michael, who he was abused by his wife, narcissism. She was a narcissist, and it was narcissistic abuse. And so that's another one because a lot of times it's the man being a narcissist, but this time it's her. And but the thing that I want to get onto is Glenn. He's just submitted his book to us 2 weeks ago. He came on a call, and I haven't seen him in a while, maybe a month or two. And sometimes that happens if you're just away in their own tunnel writing. You don't need to come onto the calls if you're doing that. But he came onto the call. Now I knew that he was moments away from submitting his book, right? But weeks go by and he hadn't submitted it yet. And you're gonna see what path I'm going down now. Then he comes onto the call and he's like, "Oh, I just needed to come onto the call." He goes, I said, "Well, where's the book, dude? Come on, sort it out. Pull your finger out, send the book." And he's like, "Oh, he goes, I'm going to rewrite the book. I'm gonna go back through it and rewrite it." And he started to pick it apart because I've done it this way and yeah, I just don't think and he goes, and I showed it to a couple of people and they think that I should write it this way. And now he didn't ask my opinion, and I'm very, very I don't give my opinion when it's not asked for, just because I'm very aware I've gone through a lot of shit in life where I know that my opinion doesn't mean it's going to work out for you, you know? So I tend to just keep it to myself unless I'm asked. And then I usually say, just to let you know, I could be wrong, you know? And with him, very rarely I do this, but I just said to him, like, listen, you didn't ask my opinion, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. I said, the book that you've written has come from a place of intuition, which means it's right. Full stop. I said, because you can show your book to 6 different people, and all 6 people are going to have their own opinion on how your book should be, because by no fault of their own, they're looking at your book through their own lens, and their lens has been made up of the life that they've lived and the traumas that they have. So of course they're going to think that your book should be slightly differently because they can only relate to it from their own experience. I said, but that is where you've gone wrong. You do not show your book to anyone. And if you have to show it to someone, you show it to your accountability partner in the program. We match people up. But their accountability partner is another survivor that they're on a journey. And even that's a bit of a stretch because that's accountability partner could have an opinion. But, and I just basically slapped his wrist. I said, you don't change anything. You submit it. And last week he submitted his book. So I just wanted to show, to attach that onto what you were saying, that is, even with the business, I know plenty of people who run major successful businesses, and their advice is to not become an entrepreneur. They say, don't run your own business. So it's like, at the end of the day, who's fucking right? Who's wrong? You know what I mean? So it's just, it's a, I
Yeah,
tell
I
you
think
what,
that.
it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard to believe yourself and not take on, because then, but it's like, but you should take on advice. People work with you. They should take on your advice, right? It's difficult. It's a difficult game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the biggest thing, and I think exactly like what you were saying there, is you don't give your opinion without it being explicitly asked for. You're really clear in telling people that your opinion is not gospel and is not right. It is just your opinion and it is how it worked for you. And I think that that's the really big thing. Like whenever I'm working with clients, and it sounds like you're kind of similar in the way that you get people to write their books, is I'm more focused on them learning to trust themselves rather than them learning to trust me. Like, I don't want to become a crutch in somebody's life where they think my business can only be successful if Jacky tells me how to do it. I want people to become so empowered in themselves that they think, I know exactly what the right decision is for my business because it's my business. And, any decision I make is the right decision. Like, that's the power that people need to have. And I think it's the same with people who are writing books or surviving trauma or, going on a healing journey or whatever that is that somebody's doing, like living out their dream. It's that question of like your dreams can only be as big as your belief in yourself. You can only get out of life as much as you believe is possible for you. And if you always believe that it's out of reach or it's not possible, or there's like you were saying earlier in the episode, like if you always think that there's one more thing you have to heal before you can have the thing that you want, there's always going to be something that you need to heal. There's always going to be something that's standing in your way. So I think like I'm really big on I can live my biggest life, my most expressed life, my most amazing life, my most abundant life, even if there is something that I need to heal. Like something that I need to heal and something that comes up is never going to be like, oh, I've got to do this first and then I can have the thing that I want. It's like I can have it all in one go because we are human. Like our existence is messy. There's no like single linear path that says, oh, if you walk these 5 steps, everything's going to work out for you. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was? But
Yes, yes, it would. And I started in business when I was 19. It took me, I'm 29, 30 in 7, 8 weeks, and I try not to think about it, so I get depressed. And uh but Powerful Books last year was my first, I launched Powerful Books at the end of February last year, and I made 100K last year. What a business did, right? And I never had that amount of success before. you know, averaging 10, 11 grand a month last year, the first year. Never had that amount of success before, ever, right? How long did it take for me to get there? Nearly 10 years. Right? Nearly 10 years. Now I say to people, I fucking hope it doesn't take you 10 years to have success. But what I am gonna say is be willing to spend 10 years failing. That's what I say. There's a small little course in Powerful Books because whenever somebody publishes a book, um, the next thing is like, what else can I do? Right? What else? And then we talk speaking and going viral on social media, and one of them is about purpose of profit. So how to turn your story into something that makes money. And one of the recommended ways is to have like a healing community for these guys. And but I say in it that however hard you think it's going to be, I really want you to understand it's going to be a lot harder than whatever you believe it's going to be. I said it took me 10 years. Okay. And you need to be willing because if you expect it's going to be 3 months, 6 months, I said, I hope it might. It might. But if you expect it, here's the danger. If you expect it and it doesn't happen, then you think that entrepreneurship hasn't worked out for you. And that's just not the truth. It's only true because you believe it's true. Right. And it's difficult. It's difficult. But you know what's funny? I'm going on a few tangents on this, so I apologize. But I watched this video yesterday, uh, and it's just a fantastic reminder about Will Smith. They're bringing out the new Bad Boys film, and
yes.
they're doing a little press tour, and Will Smith and I think is it Martin Lawrence are on the stage, and there's two other guys, and I'm assuming they're the hosts. And Will Smith basically says, he goes, when once we finish filming, we were watching the first screening of it. And the film finished, and Will was like, and I said, this is great. We're 90% there with this. And a director has said, Yeah. He goes, that's good. At least we now know that we're over halfway. And there was just silence. And to begin with, I was like, what does he mean by that? And then it clicked what he mean because you say we're 90% there. In other words, we've almost finished. But the director said, yeah, we're just over halfway there. And Will Smith goes, what? That changed everything for him. He goes, because people underestimate the effort that goes into going from 90% to 100%. Right. And Bill was like, my son is a chronic B student. That's what he said, right? He goes, he's chronic, he gets B's all the time. And he says, and he's like, and he goes, Dad, I really want to get A's. I believe I can get A's. And Bill was like, no, you can't. Right, is what he said to him. He goes, no, you can't. He goes, if you think the difference between a C and a B is the same as the difference between a B and an A, he goes, you're delusional. Right? You have to become a completely different person to go from good to great. And I think that just understanding that somebody can take that to the extreme. Somebody can just take a small little dose of that in regards to what it takes to write a book, what it takes to launch a business, what it takes to do whatever it is. It's going to require a completely different version of you. And maybe, as you talked about before, the simple act of trusting yourself is you being a different version of yourself because the whole entire of your life you haven't trusted yourself because of how much your dad used to beat you down, right? And say you can't do that, you can't do this, don't be the center of attention. And it's like, and of course you're going to take that through with you as an adult, and it requires a different version of yourself to, as you say, to break down those patterns and to reinforce new ones.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. It's so interesting. And I mean, we could probably do this for hours and hours because I feel like we have so many things that we can talk about. But I know that people are not going to want to listen to us for hours and hours in one go. So I'm going to ask you our final question of this kind of episode today and just ask, like, what is your focus going forward? Like, we know that there's always a kind of new level that you're trying to get to, especially for people who are going on this journey of wanting to kind of be their best self. So, what is the next level for Perry Power?
I want to make Powerful Books the most impactful publishing company in the world. So, publishing companies have this focus where, especially big ones like your Penguin, your Hayes House, they understandably so take on people for book deals where they're famous or they have a big audience, which I guess is the same as fame in some way, or they're just notable in their field. And again, I understand why, but I'm all about like I had this belief like these guys here in my hand, these amazing human beings who've published their books. I'm like, you have just as much of a right to publish your book as you do Barack Obama. Just because he was a bloody president, right? Cool. But these guys have been through serious shit and they're here today. They're heroes. And that's what I want Powerful Books to stand for. We stand for that now, but I want to globally stand for that, where people know what Powerful Books is. And then I want to get the ball rolling on Powerful Pictures and get our first movie done. Whether that's mine or whether that's someone else's, it doesn't matter. I just want to get that first film done. You know, within the next who knows how long, but within the next 1 to 2 years, within the next year, I would like to get a script greenlit. So that's what I would like, and then within the next 2 to 3 years, get a film out there.
That is incredible. I think it's so amazing to have such an incredible like line up of stories that you can turn into
I
movies that
know.
you can share with the world. Like there are so many people, as you said, people who walk through trauma are absolute heroes. People who get to the other side, then have the courage to share and then are willing to go on and actually create a community and make let their story become a movie and actually really change people's lives. Like they are the real heroes that it's so amazing that you give them a platform. So, I mean, yeah, I cannot wait to see your first movie go out into the world. It feels like such an achievement to celebrate already. So, yes, I am going to share obviously your Instagram, the publishing house Instagram, and any other sort of like links that we can give people to get in touch. If anybody obviously wants to write their own story and you've come through trauma and you want to get involved in this community, if you want to write your book or you want to come on the podcast, like all of those things are available so that people can share their stories more, which is really incredible. But Perry, thank you so much for giving up your time and coming and spending this time with us. It's been amazing to talk to you.
No, likewise. And I appreciate the focus on men with their voices too is needed.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.